I'm Mel Steely from the History Department at University of West Georgia. Today we're interviewing Reverend Hosea Williams as part of our Georgia's Political Heritage Program. We're at our studios at the university, and today is May the 15th, 1998. Reverend Williams, you were born in, is it Attapulgus, Georgia? Is that the way you pronounce that?
You pronounce it Attapulgus, but I was born in Valles, Florida. That's wrong.
Oh, is it?
I was born in Valles, Florida.
Okay. January 5th, 19 what?
26.
26. Would you tell us a little bit about your early life?
Well, my mother and father both was blind, and they met at a blind school in Macon, Georgia, which is still in Macon. And she became pregnant. She had a brother who was blind too, Hosea Williams. He was blind. That was her older brother. And she ran away from the school. No one knew she was pregnant. She kept herself wrapped in a towel. And that was in Valles, Florida, where her family really came into being, because her father used to be a wood rider. A wood rider is a foreman, where they dipped the turpentine from the pine trees. Mm-hmm. She went back there, and that night she had this baby at 12 midnight. Well, the pine trees forest where they collect the raw material is in Valles, Florida. But it's Port St. Joe where it's redefined. And the next day she put this baby in a trunk on a wagon. And they drove that wagon for 12 hours. She never fed the baby never hollered. When she got to Port St. Joe, and she found a family that was very friendly to her family before they moved back to Georgia. Mm-hmm. And she made a deal with them that she'd be back in 2 weeks to get the baby. And if she didn't get back in 2 weeks, they could have the baby. Well, she went home. My grandfather, excuse me, was totally illiterate. Totally illiterate. He used to take me, go to the post office sometime and get the letter, not the post office, the mailbox. Come back and say, this is my mail. I had the mail turned bottom up. But he was about as brilliant, as hardworking a man that I met in my 72 years. But he was a tough guy. He's really a tough guy. And she went back to the farm up there outside of Attapulgus, mm-hmm. and she was afraid. Now, where my grandfather was one of the meanest human beings I've ever met, his wife, if there's anyone in heaven besides Jesus, she's there, Leela Williams. And my mother went back and was just afraid to tell him. And about 3 weeks she told him when they came back to Florida, they wouldn't let her have the baby. And so you made a deal with us. Back in those days, a handshake meant more than a signed, notarized contract today. And years later, the man died, and the lady she had a lot of cures, and that's how I ended up in an orphan home, which I was booted out at the age of 12. And then that's where I found my family, outside of Bainbridge, Georgia, in Attapulgus, on a farm. And I left there and went to the Everglades of Florida, which I said, if there's a hell on this earth, it's the Everglades of Florida. And I left the Everglades of Florida, went into the United States Army. I lied about my age and got into the United States Army.
When was that? About the time the war started?
No, I went in the Army in 44.
Okay.
44. And Army was, I never had a mother, never had a father. I met my father some 35 years later. He was in Jacksonville, Florida. But I came out of the Army. I would have remained in the Army until death. But after I was wounded by the Germans, I came out of the Army because I couldn't pull full-time duty. Mm-hmm. And they had too many soldiers anyway. Because I remember when they sent so many of us home, it was after we had really settled the war, not settled the war, but got down to the nitty-gritty of the war in Japan. And just had too many soldiers in Europe. So I came back home and I was discharged. And
you were a staff sergeant? Or?
Yes, I was staff sergeant. At the age of 19, I masterminded some 64 soldiers, platoon sergeant then. And I went back to school. I don't know why I went back. I don't remember too. I remember I missed a position in the Army. They had a position on for a master sergeant. And I just knew I had that position. And they gave it to another man, and when I complained about it, I said, Jose, you have a 7th grade education. This man has 2 years in college. And that really stuck with me because I really wanted that position. I was very hurt. I considered myself a real quality soldier. And I said, I'm going to get me an education. So I came back and convinced the principal in Bainbridge, Georgia, Hutto High, Mrs. Hutto, school's name after her, to let me go back to school. And she granted me that privilege. That year was a kind of a miserable year. See, I was grown. I wasn't but 23 years old, but I lived in the streets most of my life, so I was grown. And being in class with those 15 and 16-year-old kids was a rather grueling moment. I remember something happened at graduation. It was 52 of us that graduated that year. And this is 1946, I believe it was 56. And I never forget, the little girl that I began to keep company with, she was only 17, but she was sweet as she could be, and she was very good in science, and that's why I ended up being scientific-minded. I couldn't read too well, so in history and all those social sciences, they give you so much to study at night, I never could read them. But in chemistry or mathematics or physics, you have 2 pages to do today. And I remember at graduation, and what they would do, they would call the student's name, and the parents would go up on the stage. And then the student would come and stand between the parents, and they presented them their diploma. And when they called Hosea Williams' name, there was no parents. And with all my ego and self-confidence, I froze in the seat. They got Hosea Williams. And this young girl got up and went from my mother and father, and went and stood on the stage, and I went up there and received my diploma. I didn't have a lot of interest at that time in going to college, but there was a family in Bainbridge, one of Georgia's most influential political families. It was 2 brothers, Cheney Griffin and Marvin Griffin. Marvin at that time was in the state legislature, but they were very powerful in that area down there. Well, Cheney became mayor at the age of 26. He was also a veteran, but he's also president of the Junior Chamber of Commerce. So he took over a club out there at the little air base. He's running the city in the daytime. And Cheney and I became, inseparable. It's unbelievable, a black man and a white man at that area, because we were doing a lot of devilish things, really devilish things. Women, moonshine, the gambling. And they got on Cheney about this. His brother was just so strict. Oh, God, that man was so strict.
Marvin?
Yeah, Marvin, who became governor of Georgia. And they got on Cheney. Well, one of the tricks Cheney and I used to play out at the club at night, these redneck white men who own these big farms and things would bring their families out at night. And Cheney would go there, he was drinking. He's a big, handsome dude. And, he just ordered, bring us steaks. He just ordered everything. So the bill it's a huge bill. So when time comes to pay the bill, the old white man said, okay, boy, bring me that bill. And I said, no, Cheney would say that. Okay, boy, come here, boy. Give me that bill. Let me pay it. I said, no, sir, Mr. Mayor, you've already paid 3 bills tonight. I'm going to let this gentleman here pay. Well, we used to go there at night. Everybody would go there to the slot machine. And if you put them all on roses, and they pay off so much, and I'd hold the slot machine, and Cheney would pull a leaf, boom, we'd rob the slot machines every night. But one day Cheney came to me, and it shocked me. And he said, you got to understand one thing. I'm white and you black. And boy, did that hurt me. I said, Cheney, why did you say that? He didn't want to tell me that because we had been doing some terrible things. I mean, Cheney and I. And he said, Jose, it is true. I can make it because I am white. And you will not make it here because you are black. Why don't you go to college? I said, Cheney, it's all serious he was then. I said, I don't have no money to go to college. He looked at me and said, if I pay the bill, will you go? I said, I'm going to say, we made a deal. So Cheney got to send me off to college. The only thing was, after I got in Morris Brown College one day, I had all these pretty girls out on the lawn and everything. And I saw this limousine roll up, and this white man get out. Jose, he's drunk. Jose, God damn it. Jose. I said, who in the world is It's Cheney, Cheney Griffin. Said, boy, I made a mistake. Leave this damn college. Come on and go with me. You know, his brother was governor then. And it ended up, they said, Cheney Griffin stole everything at the Capitol except the gold on the dome. But there'll never be another Pope Griffin. And in purchase, they say from Albany down to Chattahoochee, you know, the Flint River. But Cheney was a great friend, and still today he's pretty close to the point of death. He was one of the greatest friends in my life.
Well, what was it like being black and growing up in the South in that period right after the war? You had expectations, I'm sure, being a veteran and all.
It was very, very difficult. It was very difficult. We used to drive from Bainbridge to Atlanta, and if you got a sandwich or anything, there's no restaurant or no cafe that black people could go into, regardless how educated or how wealthy. Most of the restaurants and cafes, they had a back window in the kitchen. And you'd go there and knock on that back window, and they'd come and serve you out of the kitchen. And they'd have some benches out there that you could, that you would be seated in. I remember I used to be driving and a long ways, and these hotels and motels, mainly hotels back then, Fairfield motels, and you see a big light on that hotel blinking, saying vacancy, vacancy. Not for blacks. I used to park my car in the shadows of that light for protection and sleep in the car. And after I got married, I would get up that morning, and then I'd have to drive. I got this wife, this doctor. I'm a research scientist. All these beautiful kids just do Cadillac. And we'd have to drive out on the highway, and my wife would take the girls on the right-hand side of the highway to use the bathroom, and I'd take the boys on the left-hand side. Let me tell you this. When I came out of the Army, I had a terrible experience in Jimmy Carter's hometown, President Jimmy Carter's hometown, America, Georgia, because we were changing buses in America. I rode a bus from New York and was changing bus to catch another bus to Bainbridge. And in the meantime, only whites could go inside of the bus station. Blacks had to go around to the back of the bus station and knock on them, sell them anything through the window. So I don't drink coffee today. They taught me when I was a little boy, coffee make you black. So all my life I haven't drank any coffee. But I wanted, my body has always been a souped up body. I take in a lot of liquids every day of my life. So all I wanted was a drink of water. And while the lady opened that window, selling a sandwich, I saw that fountain up at the front door. Now I got on this Army outfit with all these medals and everything. And I finally I figured I'd buy you a cup of coffee, and she'll let you have a cup. Pour the coffee out. Now listen, I'm still hopping on walking keys and all this stuff. So I take the cup and go around to the front of that bus station. And I didn't go in. I pushed the door in, pushed the door open, and leaned inside and tried to get some water in that cup. And those white men beat me until I was unconscious. They thought I was dead. It was a lady, black lady, ran a funeral home, very popular in Americus, Georgia. So they called the undertaker to come pick me up because they thought I was dead. And they found out I had pulse. I said, but my heart was beating. And they carried me to a hospital in Thomasville, Georgia, which is still there today, the veteran hospital. And I laid there 8 weeks crying, hated and wishing that I had fought on the side of Adolf Hitler.
Pretty strong statement.
Yes, sir. Another thing happened. I promised I was a hustler. I was really a gangster. But I promised my grandfather that I would hustle all this money in the Army and send the money back to him. And when I come home, he would keep 50% of the money and give me 50% of the money. So when I got home, now I've been beaten in Americus, Georgia. And my aunt, really she called herself my mother, but she's my aunt. And she told me, she said, Jose, I love pork chops. If you take the car and go up to Attapulgus, we call it Hack. They call it Hack now. The name of the town is Attapulgus. We're only 6 miles from the Florida line into Georgia. And I took the car and went up there, all my uniform, all my medals and everything. And this white man that ran this grocery store, one little grocery store in the town, he was cleaning something. So I said, I'd like to have 2 pounds of pork chops. So he was down getting the pork chops. Everybody in my home called me Little Turner. My granddaddy was named Turner Williams. And he's getting the pork chops. He stood up, he said, God damn, boy, aren't you Little Turner? I said, yes. He said, say yes, sir, to me. I stood there. He said, God damn it. I said, say yes, sir, to me. And I said, yes, again. He jumped up and grabbed his shotgun. It was up over the door. And it hadn't been for his wife, he would have killed me because I wouldn't say yes, sir. I got out of the store and went home, and that's what my granddaddy told me. Jose, you know I got all the money. I've saved all the money. But I want you to, I give you all the money to leave because they're going to kill you. And I'd had a run-in with the Ku Klux Klans there once before. What happened was from Attapulgus down to our farm was 2 miles. There's one white family, and I guess that's about the sorriest man I ever met in history. He had 4 or 5 kids named Batchester. And this girl was about my age, one of his younger daughters. And we used to go out into the field and break corn and have a bucket and take the corn down into the swamps and build a fire and cook the corn and eat it. We used to fish together. At our farm, they keep the hay up in the loft. But what they do, they grow peanuts, and they take the peanuts off the bush and take the bush and make hay. And we used to go up there in the loft and tell them that builds hay to get peanuts to eat. I never touched her. Kids wasn't into sex back in those days. And one Sunday, there's a confectionery there, black lady owned, and this little white girl went up to that confectionery to buy something. And a big old fat, my girlfriend was a big fat black girl, and they started teasing her. Laura loved Jose, Jose loved Laura. And she became excited and started crying and ran back home and told her mother. And her mother told her father. The next morning before day, they went to that girl's house, a group of white men. Her father was a 300-pound man. They made him, they rounded all the blacks up there, rounded them up, and they made him whoop his daughter with a whip until she was totally unconscious. He would beat her and wasn't hitting so hard, they said, okay, rest. Well, they rounded up all the blacks. One of the blacks snuck away and told my grandfather, they gonna come here to lynch Jose. They're coming to lynch Jose. And my grandfather, he's well armed. My half-sister was one of the meanest tomboys I ever met. So he gave her a shotgun. He took the rifle and gave me the pistol. Sure enough, the next morning before day, was a line of white men in cars. And you had to walk about a block up to our house from the highway. They parked all the cars on the highway, and they came up we had a big fence around our yard. And that Papa we called him, he recognized as a group of white men, just after daybreak. And this is one of the things I'll never forget, I guess. They came up and they said, we want to see Little Turner, talking about me. My granddaddy said, Little Turner is my boy. And whatever Little Turner has done, you hold me responsible for it. You cannot see Little Turner. And they went to come in the gate, and he threw up. They knew him. My grandfather killed 3 men in my presence. The little while I was there. He was a bad man. And they, Turner don't shoot, Turner don't shoot. And they backed off and backed down and got in the car. They got down in the car. We're going to come back, nigga. We're going to kill you. We're going to kill that damn Little Turner. We're going to burn this farm down. Oh, I mean, and we all believed they would do it. It was a white family. They still lying there, the Millers. Ran a tobacco farm. Had at least 80 black families living on his tobacco farm. So my granddaughter took my sister and I, and we walked through the branch and through the woods and through the swamp and got to one of Miller's house. It was early in the morning, like 7 o'clock. He's sitting up there as a big old fat white man. Had the safe open. That man didn't have $40,000 or $50,000 in that safe. He didn't have a nickel. He'd sit up there and rock all day watching that money. So he saw my granddaddy. Everything before he said something, he said, he'd use that, Turner, what the hell you done over at my house this time of morning? And if I ever seen my granddaddy, Uncle Tom, I act like Uncle Tom, that was the time. He said, Mr. Griffith, I need help. They're going to kill my son. And he said, ooh, they're going to kill a Little Turner. And he told Mr. Griffith what happened. Okay, Turner. He said, okay. He got up and got his keys. We got this pickup truck. I'm riding in the back of the pickup truck. He and so we and Papa ride together. They drive, which is about 2 miles, up in this little town. Now, this is the truth. That bad white man got us, dang, Turner, do you see any of them trying to lynch your boy? My granddad said, yeah, the one over there standing by the post. He'd go with his head and said, I heard that you was wanting to lynch Turner's boy. And said, Mr. Griffin, goddamn, Griffin kick his butt. I mean, he said, Turner, who's the name? He beat white men there for an hour almost. And finally, we left and went on back home. And that night, I was convinced they'd catch me, they were going to lynch me one way or the other. And I went and recruited 2 guys from that farm. My granddaddy was couldn't read or write now, totally illiterate, but he was the treasurer for the black high school there, black high school. And I knew where he kept that money hid behind a picture on the wall. So I went and took the money and got these 3 guys and went back to the Everglades of Florida.
And that saved you think?
That saved me, unquestionably. They were going to lynch me.
Well, did they come back after your granddad?
No, they didn't come back after they found out I was gone.
Once you was gone, they
Once
left
I was
it
gone,
alone.
yeah.
Well, now, after you finished at Morris Brown, you got a degree, BA in chemistry.
Well, let me tell that story because that's an important story.
Okay.
I had a buddy named Hopper in Bainbridge. And that summer we became very good buddies, like twins. And he wasn't worried because he was a student at Morehouse College. And he was pretty popular, basketball player. So he's going to get me in Morehouse. So time to go to college, I packed my bags and everything. That's when Cheney sent me. And we went to Atlanta. And he carried me to Morehouse. And after Morehouse looked at my record, they said, we can't accept him. We can't accept him. He just does not have an acceptable academic background. It really hurt both of us. But he was dating the president's secretary at Clark. Don't worry, I'll get you in Clark. And went to Clark and we had the same fate. They said, we cannot accept him. He does not have an acceptable academic background. He thought about his father being friendly with the AME minister in Bainbridge. He called his father and he's all tore up. And his father said, let me talk to Bishop Fountain. Then the AME bishop of Georgia was named Fountain. The president of the college was the son. And so the minister called Bishop Fountain. And then Bishop Fountain called us and told us to come over. He said to me, you're a good-looking boy. You're a good-looking boy, and you're acting intelligent and so forth. He said, I'm going to break the rules of this college. I'm going to let you go to school here. But if you ever violate a single rule or regulation, you're out. But I'm going to give you a chance. And if it hadn't been, that's why I'm so dear to Morris Brown College today, because if it hadn't been for Morris Brown College, I would have never been able to get into a college. I'm greatly indebted to them.
And so you went through Morris Brown?
Well, I went through Morris Brown and left Morris Brown and went to Atlanta University. And I told you about the little girl I was dating back in high school. She interests me so in the sciences. So I ended up majoring in chemistry and minoring in physics. When I finished school, I got a job teaching. I taught 1 year at Conyers. And the next year, I got a job teaching in Douglas, Georgia. And I mean, it was like a slave plantation for teachers.
Was it Douglas or Douglasville?
Douglas, D-O-U-G-L-A-S.
Okay.
Douglas, down in South Georgia.
Yeah.
And one day the school superintendent, he interviewed me, and he kept using the word nigger. And how with these nigger children, I said, I don't like the word you use. And we just got into it. And the next day the police came and told me, and a coach was with me, another young coach who had finished Albany State. And he was the coach there. And they told me, you got 24 hours to leave town. No, we're going to do it different. We're going to take you to the county line. We will never catch you in this county again. So we just drove out of Douglas, and I came back. And I got a job. Back in those days, you had to take a test. I took this test and started working as a working for the United States Post Office. In the meantime, I just looked up and back in those days, you had to take the test to become a scientist with the government, you know. And I'd been out partying all night. This is the truth. I'd been out partying all night. I mean, I was cool. I was about drunk. And the next morning, we went up there and took this test. And you know, a disabled veteran get 10 points. I made 105. I made 95 on the test, which was higher than anyone else had made. And with the 10 points. And that's how I got a job with the United States government.
Agriculture Department.
Agriculture Department as a research scientist. I was the first black scientist hired by the federal government south of D.C.
And you stayed there from 52 to 63.
Yep.
And during that period, you published a newspaper.
Yep. Well, I tell you, let me tell you what happened.
The Crusader, Chatham County Crusader?
Chatham County Crusader. Let me
What
tell you
about
what happened there in Savannah. I became an upper middle class Negro. My wife was working at the college. We bought a new Cadillac every year. We didn't even go to nightclubs in the area. They were below our dignity. We'd on the weekends go to Bermuda and, to the islands. And although I was making all this money and my wife teaching college, I was in debt and all those. I was so popular. Savannah don't have many railroads coming through there. It's on the coast. So all the new cars are bought in on a truck. And I was so popular. When they brought in that first load of Cadillacs, all of the press, all my friends, because Hosea Williams always bought the first Cadillac to hit the ground. Don't care what color, what bar. The first, I was just that messed up. I used to have these, I lived on Gilbert Street. Only thing lived on Gilbert Street was lawyers and doctors and the college president and that crowd. Hosea Williams was on, I was the only one. I had a house full of kids. No one else had over 1 or 2 kids. But I was an upper middle class Negro. And it began to worry me. I know that was not the thing for me. But out at the chemistry lab, and they used to tell me out at the chemistry lab, Hosea, black people don't have to be down. Black people are down because they are lazy, because they just down. You smart, you work hard. Look at the progress you've made. And I believed it. I'd go to these white people's house and dance with their wives, dine with them. And I really thought I was something special. But I began to notice one thing. Every job that became vacant out there in science, and blacks with super qualifications would apply. White boys and white girls would come in, nowhere near the quality of that black, and they'd hire that white person. And when the black person would say, y'all are prejudiced, they said, no, we're not. We have Hosea Williams. And it finally began to come to me. You're the same thing that the house niggers was in slavery. They're using you, Hosea, to keep your own people down. And brother, I began to take note and to rebel, and my job became a hell up under this earth.
Is that the point to where you got actively involved in NAACP and became kind of a grassroots organizer?
Well,
out of Savannah?
What happened one night was, it was a club, and this guy now, I danced professionally about 2 years of my life. I was a great dancer. And in this club, this guy was supposed to be the best dancer in Savannah. So with Hosea Williams, people were watching the two of us try to outdance one another. And he went outside and got into it with the guy one night. And he came back in, the police came up. And when the police came in that club, that boy threw his hands up, and they shot him 3 times in the chest. And I was just totally upset. I went to the NAACP meeting, and here were all these preachers and all the people in the meeting, and they all want to talk, they all want to complain. But every time the president would talk about we going downtown and make the challenge, they backed up. They weren't available. So I got sick of that. I said, let me tell you all something. I said, I'm a chemist. I work from 8 to 5. So I'm free from 5 p.m. to 8 a.m. Anything you want, Mr. Law, you call upon me. And that's when I got deeply involved in civil rights. WW Law was Hosea Williams. And we really we were a hell of a team. Savannah, Georgia became one of the most active NAACP chapters in the country. But you know, while I was doing my work and fighting for the rights of my people, one thing I became cognizant of. All of the national leaders of the NAACP, all the national leaders of the civil rights organizations lived in New York City. And they used to send us memorandums down south telling us how to challenge the Ku Klux Klan. They was up in New York sending us memorandum down south telling us how to fight for freedom. And that worried me. Hell, you set up in New York. One day I turned that television on, and I saw this man in Montgomery, Alabama, telling the people, get behind me. I am going to lead you and show you how to get free. I said, that's my man, my God. It was like a whole world turned over for me. About 3 days later, I became so excited, I jumped up and grabbed two young males, they were about 16 of the young. I was head of the youth council. Everybody trusted me. And a young girl about 17. And we drove to Montgomery, Alabama. And that's where I met God. King was not my God, but God revealed himself, the true God, to me through King. And I'd watched him teach, and I'd watched him preach, and it just became overbearing. I kept saying, if he could do it in Montgomery, Alabama, I can do it in Savannah. If he could do it in Montgomery. And the third day, I became so excited. I grabbed the kids up and threw them in that Cadillac, and I took off to Savannah. I was driving about 100 miles an hour. And all at once it hit me. I hit the brakes, and the car scooted over the side. The kids said, Hosea, you crazy. You're going to kill all of us. You crazy, you know. I sat there for 30 minutes. Guess what I remembered? What? I forgot to introduce myself to King. Mm. I sat there for 30 minutes, and finally they abused me. I drove the car back to Savannah. But that's when I really became oversensitive. I would say truly sensitive to the civil rights movement. I never will forget now. I was a big man in NAACP. I was vice president of the Savannah, Georgia branch, vice president of the Georgia State Conference of Branches. I was on the region, NAACP broke down the region. And I was on the NAACP payroll. I was drawing $75 a month to do voter registration, political education in the eastern part of Georgia and in the southern part of South Carolina. So the NAACP had its convention in Atlanta. It's a national convention. And I was running, you have to get elected on the region, and then they place you on the board. I was running to get elected so I could serve in the, excuse me, my buddy W.W. Law, he was already on the board. He was the youngest member of the board at that time. And I had gotten South Carolina agreed to support me. I wasn't worried about my state, Georgia. Alabama agreed to support me. And I was talking with the guys from Mississippi. And Mississippi said, Hosea, we can't support you. I'd been over there with Meg Evers speaking and all. I said, why, man? Because your own state is not supporting you. I said, you got to be crazy. I'm vice president. My buddy is the president. So I go back and I find W. I had a lot of temper back in those days. I was more violent then than I am nonviolent now. And I said, W, what is this about that Georgia not going to support me? He said, Hosea, I couldn't bring myself to tell you. But Mr. Wilkins, Roy Wilkins, head of the NAACP, met with us. And he convinced us that you just don't project a type of image that you would hurt the NAACP, and he does not want you on the board. So I went and found Roy. I didn't know whether to whoop him, what, spit on him, what. And I said, Mr. Wilkins, please tell me. He said, well, I guess you've heard by now, Hosea. He said, you know, I like you, you're a nice guy, but you do not have a projected image that would be good for the NAACP. And I'll have to defeat you for the election. I started crying. I'll cry in a minute, violent as I used to be. And I started walking the streets. And Dr. King's office was not on Auburn Avenue, it was another close to 5 Point. And I saw the SCLC sign, and I said, that's his office. And I went in, and I said that I'd like to speak with Dr. King. And he goes, just have a seat. So finally, he came out, and he and Ralph came out, and I went in, and I started crying again. And when I told him my story, he said, well, I don't know why you should feel so hurt. He said, at least you got a chance to run for the national board. The NAACP kicked me out before I had that chance. And that was true. Just about all of the hierarchy at SCLC had been kicked out of the NAACP. And I asked him about working with him, and he said, well, he's so glad to have you. You know, SCLC have affiliates, NAACP have chapters. So I went back to Savannah. I was vice president of the branch. I was head of the Political Action Committee, Crusade for Voters, which was camouflage, because the NAACP is a 501c4. It can't endorse candidates. So we pulled the political arm out, and I hated that arm. When I voted in NAACP, about half of the people with me. And the Chatham County Crusade for Voters became the SCLC affiliate. And I was the one who started night marches in the civil rights movement. And finally, one night they arrested me. And this blind judge had all these white people to take warrants out for me, peace warrants. And for each one I had, it was $2,500. But if you put up a piece of property, he had it where that piece of property could only stand for one. So they arrested me that night and carried me out. I remember when I got to the family home, because my children, my wife, we always were together. We always marched. We always picked. And I helped get those kids to bed. I didn't have nothing on but my shorts. And someone knocked on the door, and I opened the door, and people like, there's 3 white men with guns. And they said, you're under arrest. I honestly thought they were the Ku Klux Klan. And I had to think fast. If you rebel, they're going to kill you right here, and your wife and your children are going to witness this terrible thing. Go ahead with them and let them kill you out in the woods. So I said, okay, I'm under arrest. And I called my wife. She brought my pants. So I dressed. But when you leave my house and you go this way, you go into town, make a left, you go into town, make another left, another left. So when I saw this going to town, the hell with it. Give me a buck, let me go to sleep, man, you know. So I had these night marches going on. And they put me in jail. And the first day, my bond went up to $25,000. That's 5 times, 10 times. The next day, it went up to $150,000. And they had me in that jail. I spent on bread and water 35 days. But I had trained those kids. I'd organized them. We had a commitment. If any of us were in jail, we're going to march. We're going to march every night till everybody's out of jail. And so every night they march. One night they burned, I don't know who burned it down, but one night Cicero Books was burned down. One night Firestone was burned down. And one day the old sheriff came to my cell. I had me in the basement in a cell. And he got me and carried me up to his office and said, answer the phone. Now, I'd heard talk of Busbee Lane, like you hear talk of Rockefeller, you know what I mean? So I picked up the phone and I said, hello, and someone said, this is Busbee Lane Jr. You know, the Busbee Lane, see, this bank was the richest bank in Georgia, and they were from Savannah. I'd heard about this man. I didn't believe Busbee Lane called me, so I hung up the phone. That sheriff knocked me down, he stomped me and kicked me, and I said, I just don't believe Busbee Lane. So finally he, pick up the phone. I picked up the phone and called Atlanta, and it was Busbee Lane. And I said, he said, what happened? I said, Mr. Lane, I hung up the phone. I just didn't believe you would call Hosea Williams. He said, I want to make a deal with you, Hosea. Savannah's my home. I don't want to see it go down in ashes. I don't want to see a bloodbath there. I'll get you out of jail if you stop those marches. And I'm telling you, sir, that's when they got, because I had almost gone crazy in that jail 35 days. I felt my wife was messing off with other men. I felt like those guys in the movement was messing with my girls. I just went crazy as that. But you know what that man told me? He said, I will get you out of jail if you stop those marches. You know what I told him? Mr. Lane, if you get me out of jail today and they don't integrate Savannah tomorrow, I will be leading another march. Now, I really didn't mean that. I said, so he said, I got that all worked out. He called his lawyer over and we worked out everything. That was that day. Now, I was supposed to get out the next morning. But that night they marched, and W.W. Law, head of the WCP, tried to stop him. They threw bricks at him. They had to come to the jail to get me to go out there and stop that night march. And Dr. King held his convention in Savannah that year. And now Savannah, Georgia was the most integrated city south of the Mason-Dixon line. And I just caught so much hell on my job. My job turned into a true hell. I would be, it was about 11 chemists, and nobody other than 15 samples behind. I would be 100 samples behind, and 100 more samples would come in, they assign them to me. But you know, I'm a workaholic. I'm really a workaholic. I'm souped up, you know, even 72. And so I just worked all the time. But finally, when they couldn't run away like that, I sat at my desk sometime for 3 weeks, and a sample was never assigned to me. And that's when they fired me, you know, he went to Washington, and I won it back. But my job became a hell.
Well, is that during the period when you decided you were going to enter politics?
Well, I decided to go. My wife, after we got voter registration really going in Savannah, my wife ran for office, for city council. She's the first black person to run for office in Savannah in 100 years. But after I got see, when I left the chemistry lab, I took a leave of absence for 1 year. And they're supposed to give you a leave of absence if you are studying or involved in something going to raise your quality, potential quality of service. But they know what I was doing. I went with Dr. King, and after the second year, I put in for, after the first year, I put in for a second year. They approved that. They didn't want me back in that lab. And after, no one's supposed to ever get over 2 years leave of absence without pay. I put in for 6 months, and they said, okay, God has told them, if I come back to Savannah, and in that lab, there's going to be some confrontation. And they said, okay, we're going to give you 6 months more. And they found a job by these points. I didn't want to leave civil rights. And when that 6 months up, I just turned in my resignation. But I got involved and became Dr. King's. First, Dr. King assigned me head of political action. That's to get people registered, to get people running for office and holding office, but also put pressure on the white politicians. It wasn't many people registered in the South, other than cities like Atlanta. There's a few of the major cities. And then I became Dr. King's field general. I was in charge of all field activities. And that's when I really got deep into politics. We ended up in Selma, Alabama.
Tell me about Selma.
Well, what people don't know, Birmingham, Alabama wrote the Civil Rights Bill under Bull Connor, chief of police down there. But the bill was bogged down in Congress, and it was a chance it was not going to pass. So then King carried us to St. Augustine, Florida, and under Hosea, that was the bad white man down there. And one thing helped us, a lot of whites, particularly from Boston. In fact, the mother of Miss Peabody, the mother of the governor, came down, and she was arrested and put in jail. But it was St. Augustine, Florida, that got the Civil Rights Bill through the United States Congress. And when we go into a town and we upset that town, you know, my job, Dr. King had a two-pronged organization. Had the militant arm and the conservative. Hosea Williams, who was a ultra-militant, headed the militant arm. Andrew Young, an ultra-conservative. I mean, I was sick and tired of being a slave. I just wanted to burn the town down and tear things up and kill everybody. I'm just sick and tired of being a slave. I don't want my children to be raised to this. Well, on the other end, had Andy Young. He never wanted to do nothing but pray. I don't care what Andy just want to pray. Dr. King, the wise man, would always take a position between the two of us. But I would go down there, and my job, I had a good, beautiful field staff. I tell people I had 20 Mike Tysons on my staff. It's just that they adhered to nonviolence in those demonstrations. But our job was to go into a community and break the fear that binded blacks and get them just walking and marching and sitting in and picketing, clapping their hands, stomping their feet, and really get a movement going. And we upset the town. We used to call it wreck the town. We spoke Ebonics. We related to the masses. Then the nice guys would come to town. Abernathy, Andy Young, Dr. King. They did the negotiating because those white folk, powers that wasn't about to negotiate with us. So Dr. King sent me into Selma, Alabama. And we met in Birmingham at the black motel there, the Gadsden Motel. And after we finished the movement, the question was always presented to us, where do we go from here? And after about a 3 or 4 days battle, the next was the vote, the disenfranchisement of black people. Blacks being able to register, vote, to run the whole public office. And so we were now spent the next 3 days, what community shall we choose to dramatize this national issue? And we had chose several other towns. And someone came in and said, do you know that down in Selma, Alabama, that Jim Clark don't allow black people, he does not allow black people to have a mass meeting? And see, John Lewis and Snick in that part of their territory, he had beat Snick out of Selma, out of Dallas County. They had closed office. And Dr. King said, my God, so that's the place maybe we should go. And so Dr. King told James Bevel, he said, Bevel, you go to Selma and meet with the preachers and tell them we're going to have a civil rights rally there January the 1st. So Bevel goes to Selma. Some of them, Uncle Tom, went and told Jim Clark, that sheriff. So Jim Clark sent Dr. King word, I welcome you here to January the 1st to have a rally. I enjoy seeing niggers celebrate a false emancipation. That really got the king, you know, because he was a cool man. You know, he said, Ralph, you to Beverly, you go back to Selma, and you tell Jim Clark, Abernathy will be there on the first. I'll be there on the second. And we chose Selma to dramatize the disenfranchisement of black people nationwide. Now, when we went into Selma, George Wallace sent in about 12, 15 troopers to dilute our power and help the law enforcement of Dallas County. Well, I took on a couple other counties. Every time I would expand our territory, George Wallace would send in more troopers. I'd take it in at least 8 counties. He's sending in more state troopers. So Dr. King said, well, if George Wallace wants this fight, let's take this fight to him. And that's we organized the march from Selma to Montgomery. And that Sunday march, Dr. King didn't know how many people I had gotten organized from all those surrounding counties. I got a lot of parents and children. But I would have marched Sunday because these parents got to be back to work Monday, and these children got to be in school. But I want to start off with a huge march. So that Saturday morning, like a good soldier should, I got in my car and I drove from Selma to Montgomery. And, you know, this is so many miles. This is where we can eat lunch, and this is where we sleep tonight. And, you know, when I got in Montgomery, he said, Dr. King is totally upset with you. I said, why? I said, he's been trying to reach you all day. And if there's anything that Dr. King was a sissy for, anything that man liked to do, it was preaching the pulpit. The only difference in Dr. King and most of the preachers, I used to hear him preach on Sunday. And I said, well, Hosea, go home and get some rest, because you're going to catch hell next week. Because when King left that pulpit Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, he was in the streets of America perpetrating that sermon he preached last Sunday. You know, so Dr. King got us on the phone that Saturday, and Hosea, where you been? I said, he got Bart, Ruskin, New York, Walter Fontroy, and Washington, people all everywhere. He said, gentlemen, Abernathy, Andy, he said, Dad is ill, talking about his father. And he asked me to preach Sunday, and I want you all to endorse this idea. I want to go ahead and preach for Dad Sunday, and I'll come and lead the march off Monday morning. I said, oh, my God. Half my, 2/3 of my people going on. He said, I'm going to call the roll. So he called her. Everybody said, yeah, Dr. King, we with you, yeah. He said, Hosea Williams for the last. All right, Hosea? I said, Dr. King, I can't be with you. And he got upset. He said, Hosea, you need to pray. You need to get with me. Hosea, you need to pray. You're not right. So, well, we're not marching until Monday morning. One guy they didn't get, this boy James Bever. They couldn't find James. So I jumped in the car and go back to Selma. If anybody can change King's mind, it's Bever. So I told Bevel about it. Bevel, Dr. King, on that, the preacher at the church, the local church, he had him on the phone too, where we met all the time. And Bevel and Dr. King got into kind of like argument. But finally he cooled down. And finally Bevel said, well, Dr. King, we thank you. We'll forever appreciate this decision, and we are going to make you proud of us. Thank you, goodbye. Bevel on the phone and said, you got it, go. Well, I go out there and start organizing like a crazy man then. This is Saturday night, Saturday evening. Sunday morning, the preacher let me speak. I wasn't even ordained then. And I had them people jumping over benches. I mean, so the preacher kept pulling my coat. You can't do this. Hosea, you know what Dr. King told us? You can't do this. You ain't having no voice today. The preacher jumps up and runs to the telephone and called Dr. King. The people won't stop King from preaching in Ebenezer. But he called Abernathy, and Abernathy came to the phone. When he told Abernathy what I was doing, and Abernathy left the church and got in his car and went over and told King. So they said, Andy, you got to go down and stop him. So Andy called me, and I didn't know nothing about all this. Bevel told me, he said, go. So Andy said, meet me at the airport. I met Andy at the airport, and he was so bitter. When they got up, man, what's wrong with you? You're just insubordination. We're going to get rid of you, and he's going to talk. So we got in the car. Dr. King had told Bevel I could lead 50 people across the bridge. And when the police confront me, have prayer, and come back. And the big march would take place Monday. So, no. But Andy went back to that church with me. And he tried to talk to them people. And they just went crazy. Andy called Dr. King and said, the march can't be stopped. Snick, Stokely Carmichael, that crowd, was going to lead that march. See, they was upset because we had taken over that territory, even though they had been driven out that territory. So Andy told Dr. King. So Dr. King said, okay, I tell you what, Andy. Let him go ahead and lead the march over the bridge. And whenever he confront the police, just start praying and pray a long time. Come on back. So we got all the people ready. Now what upset me, we had at the front of the line a SNCC, a SCLC, a SNCC, about 10 deep. John Lewis came to town that Saturday. No, John Lewis came that Saturday. And we marched that Sunday. So Andy had written the press statement. So he was so bitter with me. We got ready to leave the church. He gave John Lewis the statement to read to the press. That made John the spokesman. Now this is the truth before God. John like me to tell this. So we got over that bridge, and there was an army. Every policeman from every city by
the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
Edmund Pettus Bridge. There's an army. Then they had all the policemen. Then they had all the sheriffs from all the surrounding counties. Then they had all the state troopers. Then they had the Alabama State Militia. So we got over that bridge, and I said, oh, my God. And Al Lango was George Wallace's public safety director. He said, halt. And we stopped. He said, turn around and take those niggers back to the church. Well, I was waiting for John Lewis to speak. I did ordain him as the speaker. And I looked at John and he said one word, look forward. He said, I said, take those niggers back home. And I finally muscled up enough strength. I said, may we talk with you, sir? My voice trembling. He said, L.B. don't talk today. You got 2 minutes to take them niggas back over that bridge. And by that time, the strength had come in me. I said, sir, there'll be no turning back. Not this day. The days of turning back is over. And he said, although he said we had 2 minutes, he said, charge. And I'm telling you, those policemen beat us down to the ground. And then they gassed us so heavy, you could see your hand that far in front of your face. But as God would have it, the wind blew the gas over. He said, charge again. They beat us down to the ground, but I still have some army instinct in me. What are they trying to do? And I looked over the left-hand side of that highway. There was a deep ravine. They was trying to drive us down in that ravine. So then when they gassed us, the wind wouldn't blow it up, and we'd have mass death. So I told everybody, get out, get out, get out. So everybody got out, and they beat us again and gassed us. And I looked, there come 100 white men on horses. And they had these horses, and had these walking stick, big cane, and on the end was a huge iron nut. And they were just running those horses through the people. Now listen, on that march, I had 800. I had 70 black men and 25 white people. The rest of them are black women and children. And I said, oh God, as they run the horses through us, and they whop, whop, and I just could hear the brains jumping out people's head and hearts being busted. And I said, you done it this time, Mr. Bad Man. You were too bad. You was too gutsy to take those people back. How many deaths have you caused today? And I swear to God, blood was flowing down that bridge like water in the gutter. That beat us. And when all those horses went over, I can't believe it. And I saw the people all, it reminded me what happened in Egypt land. All those people started rising up. And then we started trying to go back towards the bridge. I'll tell you this little joke. It was a young girl, and I don't know how a mother trusted her. We slept in churches, the SCLC staff, and the mother used to let us sleep with us every night over there. She was about 6 or 7 years old. And my assistant, who didn't weigh but 130 pounds, he had her running back across the bridge, and I said, Ben, let me have her. Let me have her. So Ben handed her to me, and I had her fine. She looked me in the face. She said, Mister, please put me down. I said, what? She said, you just ain't running fast enough. I put that girl down to me. But let me tell you something, I ended with Selma. When we got back, Jim Clark had about 700 white men over that bridge. And when about 50 of us would come off that bridge, several white men had these clubs, and they started beating us again. And a black lady that I knew very well, she ran up to me and threw this quilt over my head. I said, are you crazy? She said, shut up. And I wasn't far from her. There was a house there. She pushed me under the quilt on the porch. Jim Clark had told her, those men, find Hosea Williams. I want him killed. But the 7 Montgomery March, it gave us the right to register and vote across this nation. I'm disappointed in it very much now because so many black politicians get elected nowadays and they forget from whence they come. And many of the black politicians have become a greater enemy to the progress of black people than the white politicians.
Did you find the Kennedys helpful during this period?
They were inspirational. What people, Kennedy's are very misinterpreted. People got to understand, Kennedy was a United States senator. You can't tell me nothing he did for black folk. He is from Boston until after he got to be president. And let me tell you, I got to be president. Dr. King had been arrested by old George. He's a buddy of mine now there right down there in Decatur County. They caught Dr. King driving when he moved back here with an Alabama license. They put him under probation. And later on, they say he was speeding 45 in a 30-mile zone. And that's when they sent Dr. King to the state prison in Reedsville to serve 1 year. Well, the race for president was real hot between Kennedy and Nixon. And both of them had planned to say something about King. And Kennedy found out Nixon had a 12 o'clock press conference. Kennedy held his press conference at 10. Demanded that Dr. King be released. And that's, Kennedy won by a small margin. We believe that Nixon had come out before Kennedy, Nixon would have been the president. But the Kennedys, after they got in office and then Robert became the United States Attorney General, they worked fairly well with us there. Their leadership, their political leadership was inspiring. But I do believe the same element of our society killed Kennedy, killed Dr. King.
What element would that be?
There was a clique articulated by the head of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover had a folder, just like you got in your hand, of almost every relevant leader in America. What extramarital relationships they'd had, what money they had squandered or borrowed they shouldn't have had, all the bad things about them. And that's how he was controlling them. So when he tried to control Dr. King, one night, we led that march. I was the chief organizer. Dr. King took over the march from Memphis, Tennessee to Jackson. That's where James Meredith got shot down. James was going, with his peculiar self, because the man is smart, he was going to march from Memphis to Jackson. He said, to rid my body and my soul of the fear that have been ingrained in me since I was born. And black folks had that fear. Well, the first day they shot him down, and we went and took that march up. But one of the roughest places between Memphis and Jackson was Grenada, Mississippi. And when we got to Jackson, Dr. King was thanking everybody. I said, no. I'm not going home. I am going back to Grenada. Them the baddest white folks I've met yet. I'm going to give them the opportunity that they seek. But one night, we were marching. They beat us up every night. And one night we marched, and 2 carload of FBI men led the march. They led us down to the courthouse. They got us to the courthouse, and I'm waiting to get the hell beat out of us to beat us every night. And nobody can't show up. We got 2 carload of FBI men. We started back to the black community. We got to a huge building. Those cars took off. I said, "Ho, I still got that Army military instinct." And we peeped around that corner. There were a huge number of white men with all kind of weapons. And I said, let's back up slowly and quietly. And we backed to the courthouse. And that night, Dr. King denounced the actions of the FBI. J. Edgar Hoover, head of the FBI, called Dr. King and said, I'm calling the press conference, and you're going to make the statement. You're going to apologize to the FBI. Dr. King said, I never will, because I told the truth. And then he and King started having meetings. And this is not widely known. I think they had 4 private, big, long, secret meetings. At the last meeting, J. Edgar Hoover told Dr. King, the only way you can protect this legacy that you've built with your life is to commit suicide. Otherwise, I'm going to destroy it.
I mean, he's going to take all that information and put it out?
Yeah. He'll take all that
Now,
information.
he did send a lot of it to Ms. King, didn't he?
He sent a lot of it to Ms. King. But so you know, some of it, but they planted other folk, Dr. King's head on bodies, claiming his places we knew he was in another city, and they started bugging us. Dr. King went and hired a boy, Hockey Kleinfeller from Holland, a world-renowned expert on bugging. And I'm telling you, we could call 3 hours, say we find in New York, and going to the hotel, those rooms had already been bugged. He had Dr. King under close scrutiny. I remember the time we went, the last flight he took with us was to Memphis, and we ran out the airport, and we always used to say, if Dr. King was going to ever be killed, it would be running to that airport, because always left the office late. So this day we ran to the airport and got out there and got down to the gate. The plane was supposed to leave at 9. We got to the gate about 9:10. Nobody been loaded on the airplane. So finally they started loading the airplane, and we all got on the airplane. The plane took off. And the pilot said on that flight, that's his last flight to Memphis, I want to apologize for the late departure.